Nick, how good is it that Series 1 of Conspiracy Cabal is proudly supported by Whole Life?
Well, we're very lucky, mate. Whole Life's an Australian pharmacy and wellness retailer. They've got stores across the country, an easy-to-use online platform offering over 6,000 pharmacy and lifestyle essentials.
Whether you prefer to shop in-store or online, you can browse their range at wholelife.com.au.
And if you want to support the show, use the code CABAL10 at checkout. You'll get $10 off your first online order when you spend $50 or more. Terms and conditions apply.
And a little kicker here, orders over $69 receive free shipping Australia-wide. That's wholelife.com.au, where good health isn't a conspiracy.
Before we get into this episode, and I'm sure you can guess from the title, there are numerous mentions of child sexual abuse in this episode. If you need support after listening, dial 1-800-RESPECT or Lifeline on 13 11 14.
Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Bill Clinton, Richard Branson, Donald Trump, Steve Bannon, Noam Chomsky, Deepak Chopra, and of course, a creep formerly known as Prince Andrew. All of these powerful men, and so many more, have been ensnared in the unending scandal surrounding sex trafficker and paedophile Jeffrey Epstein. US Justice Department has released more than 3 million documents taken from the Epstein's computer files. The curiously named Epstein Library is an investigative journalist's paradise, traversing Wall Street, the White House, Silicon Valley, Hollywood, and the British royal family. Today on the Conspiracy Cabal, we consider if the Epstein scandal proves a key theory espoused by the QAnon movement, that there really is a global pedophile network of elites, and whether Epstein was associated with intelligence agencies. I'm investigative journalist Richard Baker.
And I'm medical doctor Nick Coatsworth. Welcome to the Conspiracy Cabal, to all you Kabbalistas out there. The podcast, the only podcast that searches, Rich, for the kernel of truth. Now, that was a huge list that you just read, and I won't go through all those names again, but we got to emphasise from the get-go, don't we? These are important people with a lot of money. Gates, Musk, Branson, Trump, Bannon, and Chomsky. They've all been featured in correspondence with Epstein, but as at this point in time, there's no material evidence released by the Justice Department in the United States that any of them were involved in any criminal activity, and we will not be suggesting that during this podcast.
Spot on, Nick. We do not want to lose our houses here on the Cabal, but it is fair to say the correspondence shows many powerful men in a rather unflattering light and seemingly very eager to party with Jeffrey.
Perhaps an important time to bring it to the victims here, Rich. You're a father. I'm a father. My eldest daughter is currently the age of the victims. The stories, when you read this, I'm just, I can feel the hairs going up on the back of this guy was foul. There are clearly other foul people in his orbit. The story's not going to go away. But around the world where there's imbalance in power, and it's men who are in power, young, vulnerable girls are in danger. And it's not always money. We know that there's investigations in the north of England going on at the moment for pedophile rings within religious communities all around the world. And so we should pay tribute to the victims of these sort of crimes. And also, as I was talking, I'm thinking about the people who we rely on to investigate these things, particularly in our own Australian Federal Police and state-based child crimes units. I mean, the stuff that they have to look at. So, lest I get a bit emotional on it, I'd stop there. But he was disturbing if he was your mate, and I think so many people are finding that out, aren't they? Whether the connection was a friendship one or went more deep than that. I mean, all those files. It's just another few names every day, isn't it?
Yeah, and look, it is. It's really hard to keep track of. And as I said, like in the opening there, investigative journalist delight. Yesterday, I was busy doing lots of things, but I got sidetracked for 2 hours going through the Justice Department and disclosure log. So very easy for people to find. I'm sure many listeners out there have already had a play around with it, but you just go in and it's very simple. Pump in a word right into the blank space in the search area. I just put in Melbourne, for curiosity's sake. He came up with dozens and dozens of pages and some really obscure stuff like records of people I've never heard of, marriage annulments and financial settlements, minor bank loans with like sort of third-tier finance companies. Now, how the hell they came to be in Epstein's possession, or it could be, who knows, there could be a grand conspiracy there. But even stuff on so all of these files are taken right from his computers and electronic and digital records when he was raided by the Justice Department.
Yeah, so it's not as though he has sought to archive this material. This is just like his Apple or his Outlook account. It's just his hard drive.
Yeah. But going through these things, like one of the things is interestingly just turned up in the latest round of disclosures is an interview with a former Miami police chief, and this is going to Trump, the world's most powerful man. And, he and Epstein appeared to be close in the 1990s for a while. But when Epstein came under investigation in Florida for underage sex trafficking and procurement of children for prostitution, Trump apparently called the police chief there, and this is a memo of an interview with the police chief saying, everyone knows he's disgusting and things like that. Because what I find really interesting about this is that, okay, and we'll get to the specifics of that charge and that, but it's on the public record that he's gone to jail in 2008 for, really despicable crime, yet he's welcome back. And his power and his network and his reach is only enhanced. And it's absolutely extraordinary. And I think I've never, in decades of journalism, I don't think I've ever seen a story that is this complex and this globe traversing, and it provides the public with such a great insight into how power works.
Yeah, I think these are the threads that'll go through the podcast, Rich, that, there's strong elements of power, there's strong elements of power imbalance and elite networks. But I think, the question here that we've got to try and answer is there any credence at all to the idea, the QAnon idea, that there was an organized elite pedophile ring of whom Epstein was at the center, and that associated conspiracy about whether he was involved in some sort of foreign intelligence operation, namely the Israelis and Mossad. But to understand that, we probably need to understand a little bit more about the fella himself. Now, you had a look at a particularly good New York Times article, which you'll put in the show notes. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, this is a great piece of reporting by a bunch of New York Times reporters. And sometimes when you're doing your finances and questioning all your subscriptions, and you can look at, I'm a subscriber to New York Times, and but from periodically I fall out of love or just out of the habit. And this, when I went to read this was months worth of subscription for me. Just getting this piece, and we'll put it in the notes. But these guys combed through Epstein's backstory and traced it right back to Coney Island.
Coney Island,
yeah, Coney Island. Growing up in a working class family.
Okay.
And so in the mid 1970s, this is when he makes his entree into the world of finance and the upper echelons of New York society, right? But he's nowhere. He's a nobody. Okay? He's a maths whiz and a piano virtuoso. There is right. Two skills as a kid. He can play Rachmaninoff, and he's really, really good at maths. So he's a high school teacher at the Dalton School, which is a prestigious school on New York's Upper East Side. And he's at a school function and he has a chance encounter with a well-connected school parent. And this changed his life. It's not what you know, but who you know. There's a lesson for all of us there. But anyway, this parent says, "You're wasting your time here, mate. There's more for you in the world." Makes a call. Next thing, Epstein's got a meeting with Ace Greenberg, who's a top executive at Bear Stearns, which was then a blue-chip Wall Street investment bank.
Is there any more Wall Street name than Ace Greenberg? Like, you couldn't even make it up.
Right, Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah, right.
I won't ask you about your numbers, if anyone knows in the movie, the rookie numbers. But anyway, it was like the ultimate lucky break, and an unlucky one for so many young women around the world who came into his orbit. But at Bear Stearns, Epstein, he learned the value of money, and what they were doing at the time, instead of getting Ivy League, kids in there, they had a policy of getting scrabblers and battlers in who would do anything, like cut their grandma's throat to make a buck. And he was certainly at the forefront of that. And even so, right, he had this amazing ability from early on, Epstein, to dodge trouble,
right,
and to ingratiate himself with people who would provide insulation. So there's an example of this when the HR department at Bear Stearns just had a look through his resume after he'd started and seen that he'd put down that he'd gone to 2 Californian unis. And he did a bit of research on that and turned out to be false. And it was raised with the boss, and the boss asked him to come in for a meeting. We need to talk. He was dating the boss's daughter at this point as well.
Stop it.
Yeah, no, true. The boss just said to him, "Hey, we've found out you've been lying about your education." And he just goes, "Yeah, I know. So what?"
Yeah.
Like that's it. And he just moved on. And that gave him his first insight into the world of the super rich. And I think lit the fire that I want to be one of these guys.
And he's already, I guess, with that story, working out how to leverage networks to get himself out of trouble. Like this is an early talent that he's demonstrating in the 90s. For people who have heard of Bear Stearns, or that name sounds familiar, it was one of the first financial institutions to go under during the global financial crisis of 2008. So, and this sort of comes back into the story a little bit later on. But he's working for this is hardcore, ruthless Wall Street stuff.
Yeah, this is Michael Douglas Wall Street.
100%.
And what the New York Times was able to find out was that pretty early on into his career there, he was finding success at abusing expenses, insider trading, secret commissions, ripping off investors, and promoting himself as a bounty hunter for hidden cash. So, and he was already cutting a swathe through, young women, and Cosmo magazine actually named him Bachelor of the Month.
Bachelor of the Month, though.
Yeah.
That's not Bachelor of the Year, is it? They obviously didn't think too much of him.
Yeah, I know, but I wonder if they could, I wonder if they've stripped him of that honor.
Yeah, well, I bloody hope so. But so he's making this leap into Wall Street. But I think there's also a technique, as I understand it, that he's got that sort of ingratiates himself with older, wealthy men. How does he do that?
Well, his habit there is sidling up to them and asking for a look. I'm a financial whiz, I'm a maths whiz, and obviously where he's working, he was. Give us a look at your books. I'll have a look at your finances, and he'd go back to them and say, "Oh, they're a mess. You need help, and you can't trust anyone around you. You want me to sort it out for you? I'll fix it." And he must have been the best person at gaining confidence because that was his strategy, and that's how he got real money. And the person that really opened the door to him to that next level of wealth and influence was a guy called Leslie Wexner. And he is the businessman and owner of Victoria's Secret. And other fashion brands like Limited and stuff like that. And
when you start looking at those threads, it seems to be a little bit of a coincidence.
Yeah, and appointed himself as a talent scout.
Right, did he?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, amongst all the other things, cash bounty hunter, financial guru and ultimate connector. He also, was acting as a bit of a talent scout. And what's interesting with Wexner, right? Wexner is a billionaire, and he had an existing, strong financial team around him, and he actually sent one of his top guys to go and meet Epstein and suss him out. And the guy reports back to Wexner going, "Oh, steer clear, I smell a rat." And Wexner ignores this advice. And he actually puts Epstein in charge of that guy. And again, you can only imagine the charisma or the personality that someone with not much of a link to a billionaire. And normally I would imagine a billionaire to be rather suspicious of people wanting to access or control their money.
Yeah.
Yet he seemed to be able to override, relationships between a billionaire and their staff and years of loyalty.
It's funny, Rich. I have, to an extent, kind of kept away from this story and until we did this podcast, really. So even doing that, I haven't heard or appreciated just how attractive this man must have been to others. And there are people in this world, and we know them within our own friendship circles that seem to be able to strike up these immediate and seemingly deep, ultimately very shallow relationships, but trusted confidence men. And that's where the term comes from, isn't it?
Exactly. And they must have the blue aura, I think.
The blue aura?
The blue aura.
What's
yeah.
that?
Haven't you heard of that?
No.
Yeah, I hadn't either. And so again, another little sidebar here. I was down the coast over summer and just got out of the water with my wife, and we were drying off and we'd been snorkeling and put some stuff in the boot. This 60-something old barefooted fisherman comes striding over to our car, and I'm going, shit, what have we done wrong? He looked like he wanted to tell us off.
Right.
And he came up and he just goes, and he points to me and he goes, I just had to say, he goes, you have the biggest blue aura I've seen in years. I saw it from out in the water, and he goes, I don't see it that often in people, but when I do, I like to tell them, and it's huge. And I said, is that a good thing? He goes, oh yeah, look it up. It's a really, really good thing. And then my wife goes, well, what about my aura? And he goes, it's black. And then he said he was joking. And then I said, well, how do you see them? And his answer was ketamine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So on the way in today, Nick, out the front of the building here at the studio, you had half like a halloumi wrap going on. Why only eat half?
It was delicious, mate. And halloumi and mushroom, to be honest. And that's kind of, for those of you that don't live in Abbotsford in Melbourne, that's like bacon and eggs. It was really good. But if you eat half of something and wait for 10 minutes, then your satiety reflex kicks in and you don't want any more. And that just gives your body a little bit of a chance to digest without me going all sort of, heavy belly, can't do a podcast sort of vibe. So I reckon that's a great health message.
Maybe I should have been going to wholelife.com.au. Whole Life are our sponsors of Season 1 on Conspiracy Cabal. And, mate, they have got an enormous range in online and physical retail stores.
Yeah, they do, mate. And it's great to have a series partner with us for Series 1, dedicated to that curiosity and inquiry and good health, mate. It's not a conspiracy, that's for sure.
It's not. And for listeners of this podcast, there's a special deal for you. If you use the code CABAL10 at checkout, you're going to get $10 off your first online order when you spend $50 or more on their range of over 6,000 pharmacy and lifestyle essentials.
And if that wasn't enough, mate, you'll also get free shipping if you order over $69 worth of those products Australia-wide. And terms and conditions do apply.
Anyway.
Well, we've departed a fair bit from Epstein here, but because this is a guy with a black aura. And speaking of black auras, he seems to come into the orbit of one Donald J. Trump.
Yeah. So 1990s New York, these two are hanging out, all right? So when Epstein gets more cash, he buys a mansion in Florida about a mile away from Trump's club, Mar-a-Lago. I mean, everyone's heard of Mar-a-Lago.
Yep.
He runs the world half the time from Mar-a-Lago.
Yep.
And, they were chummy. It's on the record that they were hanging out a lot together in Florida and New York. Epstein was gambling a lot at one of Trump's casinos in Atlantic City. And they were partying, it was, not breaking the law either, I should say. Like, again, we're not saying that they were up to anything wrong, but they were hanging out. And, so we've taken a bit of shortcut to reach this point in time in the 90s. But, just going back to that New York Times investigation, if people want to look it up, the headline is Scams, Schemes, Ruthless Cons. The untold story of how Jeffrey Epstein got rich.
I want to stop you there only because, this is it's the conspiracy cabal. There's so much going on outside of mainstream media on this, and we've referenced a couple of things that are very much from what people would call legacy mainstream media. How do you, when you go through this sort of stuff as a journalist, how do you pick out what is good reporting and what isn't good reporting?
It comes down to the sourcing. So, and this is one of the reasons why we want to do this podcast, right? We are open-minded about conspiracies, obviously, and interested in them, and we search for that kernel of truth. And in searching for that kernel of truth, we're looking for evidence and sourcing. So with this New York Times piece, for example, I mean, they interviewed dozens and dozens of people, many of whom are on the record. So former bosses from Bear Stearns are on the record. The documents that they're able to cite, and things like that there's no stone left unturned. And, people out there might go, oh, well, a certain media outlet has a point of view or a bias or whatever. I don't really care about that. I look at the piece in general, and you can tell whether or not it's well-sourced by looking for those things. Conversely, there's a lot of stuff out there on YouTube that looks attractive, right, that will tell you or promote or whatever that here's this conspiracy or this thing's true, but there's nothing there.
There's no
sourcing. Yeah. There's no records, no whatever. It's just a rehashing of another person's theory or whatever. So it all comes down, to the facts, the best assembly of the facts you can get.
That you can possibly
get. That's what I'm looking for in a story like this, because it is serious subject matter and serious people involved. So you got to, it can't be taken lightly. But so we've got the Trump Association, but I think there's one more bigger and more important association in the 90s that Epstein makes, and that's with Ghislaine Maxwell,
daughter of Robert.
So if people don't know, Robert Maxwell was a media tycoon in the UK, owner of newspapers, kind of like a smaller version of Rupert Murdoch, but very influential, very well connected. Now, his daughter was able to educate and teach Epstein how to act with a bit more class. Like, he's this brash kind of working class New Yorker who's on the make his whole life and he's climbing circles, but he doesn't know how to behave with aristocrats and Lord so-and-so at Ascot and things like that. And she does.
She does. And they're shacked up. They're going out.
Yeah. So like Robert Maxwell dies a rather unexpected and untimely death in the early 90s. And shortly after that, she moves to New York. They'd been kind of friends and in each other's circles, but then they start, dating proper. And this is also the period, according to many reports, not just New York Times, but other ones here, that Epstein really starts systematically, grooming young women. And Maxwell, of course, as we will go on to learn, will play a key role in that as a facilitator and a co-conspirator.
It's an astonishing relationship already, just on face value, when you consider that this is your partner, and your partner ultimately starts to either be your enabler or shares the same proclivities as you do, or is your pimp.
Yeah, totally.
Getting people. Although I hesitate to use that word because these young girls were not prostitutes, and that's an important thing to clear up straight away. They were. It's important because they were framed as such, and that's how his case in 2008 was framed, which we'll get to in a second. But has he got his island yet? Because he's
not quite yet. Yeah. So he makes we're moving through the mid-90s now, and Bill Clinton's in office now. We named Clinton in the start is featured in the files.
Yeah.
There's a photograph in there that listeners might have remembered seeing recently of him sort of looking like he's reclining with his arms behind his head in a hot tub. And I'm going to digress here because I have a great Bill Clinton hot tub story.
Don't we all?
I don't think I've spoken publicly about this before. I was in when I was at the age in Los Angeles, in Santa Monica in 2013 maybe, on a story. And I met up with a guy over there who had been friends with the Clintons, family friends, for decades. All right, since the 70s, he'd known Hillary and Bill since the 70s, and his siblings. They were all friends. They were like same age, different things. So we were. He took me out for a few beers, and we were drinking at this really nice pub, and walking away from it. And he goes, climb this fence, lean up and tell me what you can see. So I get on my tippy toes and pull myself up and look over. There's this great big hot tub there. I go, see a hot tub? And he goes, yeah, I'll tell you a story. So when Bill was president, he was in the hot tub enjoying some company and stuff in there. And the Secret Service, he would not get out. And so they knew they couldn't get him out of there. He was enjoying himself. And they knew I lived just up in the Hollywood Hills there. And so I get a phone call like late at night. Can you come down, bring a bathrobe? He won't listen. So he goes, I have to drive down there and go, Mr. President, would you please step out of the hot tub? Because you could imagine if paparazzi just like had a camera over the fence. It's not that hard if I could just get up on my tippy toes. So
I mean, look at that though.
The people you meet.
Well, not just the people you meet, but the networks that, and it kind of speaks to what we're talking about here. This is, the networks of the rich and powerful and what they can sort of get up to behind a fence, if true. That is a cracking story.
Yeah, so obviously, in this period, there's photographs showing this where Epstein uses political donations to the Democrats and to Clinton to help his 96 re-election campaign. And that's the relationship there. So, money opens doors and then other things follow there. And towards the end of the millennium, that's when the island, the little St. James Island in the US Virgin Islands in the Caribbean is bought. And it's a perfect place for a guy like him because it's a tax haven.
Tax haven, it's remote, and it becomes his hunting ground. He gets up to no good with underage girls. And I think we know a lot of this, don't we, from Virginia Giuffre, who sadly lost her life. But we are literally talking about hundreds of victims. So what do we sort of know about Maxwell and Epstein and the extent of their offending in the sort of late 90s and early 2000s?
The files make this clear that people in their network who knew what they were up to were acting as spotters. They had spotters around the world in Eastern Europe, Australia, obviously in the United States. And they were looking at that period of time for underage girls, often from broken homes, poor backgrounds, where there's domestic violence or abuse already established, and offering them an opportunity into another world. And Maxwell was the soft base and, the mother hen, if you like, to provide that comfort. And once they got in, it would start out as, we're going to pay you, Jeffrey just wants a massage, but then he'd be naked and then they would be coerced into taking their clothes off, and then, I don't have to really go into it, but it went down very dangerous and exploitative.
Yeah.
Criminal path.
And as I said, I'd been deliberately avoiding looking into this. There is a fantastic 2018 Miami Herald piece, which we will put in the notes, which if you do want to just see the extent of the depravity, but also the sort of it's a pedophile Ponzi scheme. I mean, the way he's running this, you get a vulnerable child in who needs the money and is paid for the massage and gets paid more and more depending on what they do, and then not only that, but they get paid for recruiting more young women, and that's how it gets to the hundreds and the hundreds. But it starts getting really, really concerning when he actually gets charged for this. He eventually, there is a case that is mounted against him, and we're going to talk about that now, Rich, because this is where the protection racket comes in, I reckon, and regardless of, we'll make a conclusion about others and whether they were involved or not in Epstein's activity. We're talking about Epstein, and once he was charged, people definitively must have known. But tell us a little bit about what he was charged with and how he got off.
Yeah, well, the Miami police and prosecutors received information that what we were just talking about, that there was this sort of sex trafficking operation going on involving children, and they were being solicited. This is the charge sheet: solicited for a child for prostitution and for soliciting a prostitute. And they're incredibly serious charges. And Epstein, because of his wealth and his connections, was able to have a roll call of some of America's most famous lawyers to come into bat for him. And those guys, Dershowitz, it features in the correspondence and in the files that have been released and stuff like that. But they arrange, and this is how power works, and this is why people believe in this network of elites and the deep state, because he gets 13 months on a plea deal. And part of that plea deal is that they don't go after, so they'd identified, this is the authorities had identified potential co-conspirators in his crimes. Nothing happened. That was a shield for everybody else.
Yeah, so this was also one of the most astonishing things that I found in this case, that he is able to essentially dictate through his lawyers the course of that case, to the point that the charges are actually much less. The charge of soliciting a child prostitute implies that these women were prostitutes already. These girls, they weren't. They were coerced into some sort of exchange for money. So he sets himself up with a downgraded charge, and then manages to wrap around all this legal stuff to actually stop any of the other information getting out, to the point where there are articles that suggest that even the judge presiding over the case was unaware of key elements because of deals that had been done. And you talked about Alan Dershowitz, another name that might be familiar, Ken Starr, who was actually the person who investigated Clinton for the Monica Lewinsky affair. We are talking absolute elite top-level US lawyers coming in, pressuring a guy by the name of Acosta, who's the sort of federal prosecutor, and there's another one involved. But Acosta ends up being quite interesting because he turns up in 2018 in the Trump administration as one of Trump's senior bureaucrats.
Yeah, it'd be great to get Acosta on as a guest on the podcast.
If anyone knows
that would
him.
be an exclusive. Yeah, I might put a call into my friend in Hollywood who seems to know everyone, and see how that goes. So that's 2008, right?
Yeah.
Epstein, it gets this extraordinary deal, and that is absolute proof that that the old saying that everyone's equal before the law.
Yep.
Well, they're not.
They're not at all.
Not at all. And this is true in Australia too. You got access to cash, you've got a far better chance of getting a much better outcome in a criminal case than if you're just a Joe Average or nobody. But America, I think that's magnified.
Yeah.
Okay. Because it's where money really talks. This next phase is what I find perhaps the most galling thing in all of this. Like, all of Epstein's contacts and friends and all of that knew what was going on, what had happened, what went down, what he was accused of was far worse.
Yes.
But what he went down for is bad enough.
It's bad enough.
And yet they still flock to him.
Mm.
He comes out of jail not diminished, but empowered.
That's an astonishing scenario, isn't it?
And this leads us into where, the question of is there a crossover with the QAnon theory? And the conspiracy is that there is a global ring of elite pedophiles, almost all from the progressive side of politics, mind you, and that a pizza shop in Washington, D.C. is global HQ of said ring. And the hero in the QAnon tale is none other than Donald Trump, who is,
of course it is,
got the cape on to fight and stand up to these elites. But, and the QAnon theory is fluid too, like all good theories. It moves with the times and you are able to adapt and morph it to ever-changing events that are around us. Now, I think we can both say that theory of this ring and pizza shop and all of that, no credibility.
I think we can say it's completely bogus.
Yeah.
I do find it interesting psychologically how it's almost as though leveraging on that deep human feeling of shame. And how do you exclude someone from a group or paint them in the worst possible light in modern society? Well, you call them a pedophile. And actually, I say modern society has probably been quite lengthy in human history that's been a source of extreme shame. So, whether you're on QAnon and you're considered sort of alt-right, whether you're on the far left side of politics, it's a strategy, isn't it, to leverage that accusation at people.
Oh, yeah.
In this case, Epstein, absolutely correct. In QAnon's case, that there's some sort of concerted progressive left-wing pedo ring, we're not finding it.
No, we're not finding that. But the Epstein, the story and the truth around him does, to me, actually hint at or is suggestive of a network of elites who are able, through their relationships and their wealth, to protect each other and create this shield of secrecy around their conduct, particularly when it comes to, partying with younger women and doing things like that. And I think it's a great example of what a deep state might look like. I mean, if you go through the Epstein emails and files, you have got elite men from business, politics, finance, academia, entertainment, all wanting to party with him. And many of those guys from those worlds talking about fun times. Let's bring your girls. Let's do that.
Yeah, the classic Vladimir Nabokov novel Lolita is mentioned in more than a few of these emails. It's said to be Epstein's favourite text, not surprisingly. So I think absolutely the point here is that from 2008. There's almost a sense that pre-2008 there's some degree of protection of being able to plausibly deny that you actually knew this, whether you were Clinton or Trump or that sort of thing. From 2008, the plausible deniability is out the window, and so the sort of reaction we're getting, like for example, favourite longevity expert Peter Attia, suddenly you're not hearing his name much anymore. Gone because of almost cancelled because of the Epstein files. So I think there's a definite crumbling of that network because of the fact that the plausible deniability no longer exists post 2008.
And it's really interesting for those who have been caught out post 2008, the straws that they will clutch at to justify their association or their relationship.
The only guy that's come out clean seems to be Kevin Rudd. Because, everybody's trying to why you would try and get Kevin Rudd to your party in New York is sort of, I mean, this is interesting. This probably opens up the foreign influence stuff because you don't bring him along. I don't know. He's going to lecture you on Chinese history and Mandarin. But
he might be a fun guy. Remember when he was running for office in 2007 and that story came out that he went to the strip club in New York with Cole Allen, the editor of the New York Post.
And everybody goes, sure he did.
That actually
no
humanized
way.
him. It didn't harm him because it made him go, far out. You actually might be half like not a robot.
You are not a robot.
Now, one important thing happens with Epstein too after he gets out of jail and in the late 2000s is that he's more careful. Okay, so he moves his targeting, still likes young women, but he shifts the age profile from illegal to just legal. Okay?
Yeah.
And that, there's a legal line there. Morally,
there's no moral line.
There's no moral line, right? Yeah. But it's significant. I think it's worth noting that, again, because it goes to the knowing of what you're doing.
Yeah.
All right? This is calculated stuff.
The big question, which to an extent, and I suppose this is where you sit on this conspiracy spectrum, is more or less unanswered, is not just who knew what, which is what we've raised here, but were there others who shared the same proclivities as Jeffrey Epstein? That is the question that everybody's been answering. And, is it likely that there are, potentially a handful of others who have managed to keep this quiet, who shared that? I think there must be. I mean, surely it's not just him sitting in his own little world here. Is it the
we know Prince Andrew?
We know the man formerly known as Prince is a key one of those. The other thing that I think we just got to cover off on absolutely is the idea that this was a guy who was somehow peddling blackmail and doing so on behalf of foreign intelligence agencies, or maybe even the CIA. I think Mossad has been brought up, CIA has been brought up, Russia, that great Russian word compromat that Trump made sure everybody understood. So what do we should just touch on that.
I think it's a really important part of the story, because this is an evolving part. Like in these recent disclosures, there's bits and pieces coming out that add fuel to the fire for that claim that there was an intelligence aspect. And it's unsurprising in a sense when you consider, like, this guy's the most connected guy in the world. I don't think there's anyone more well-connected than he was for 20 or 30 years. And no one, given what he and what it looks like others were up to, had the ability to have more dirt on so many influential figures to exert leverage, influence, silence, complicity, whatever you want. That would be incredibly valuable for any intelligence service worth their salt. Now, a few years ago, like just after Epstein died in prison, which is, there's conspiracies around that too. I don't think we've got time to really go into those today. But, theories going around about his role and the intersection with intelligence. And by and large, in sort of mainstream circles and in media and things like that, they were not given much credibility. There wasn't much credence there. But this latest dump of material includes a really interesting memo from the former boss of the FBI field office in Los Angeles. And in that memo, this is recording what a confidential human source had claimed to the FBI that Epstein was working for Mossad and had been for quite some time, and that his training as a Mossad. Now, Mossad is the Israeli secret service, for those who don't know. That his training for them took place under the prime ministership of Ehud Barak in around 2008 to 2013. And it's on the record and was well established that Barak and Epstein were extremely close. I think Barak had visited and stayed with Epstein 30 times between 2013 and 2017.
Right.
Post the charges.
Yeah.
So huge question mark about his judgment. And it's, we have to say that this FBI, this memo is from an unnamed, unverified source. We don't know, but the source claimed to have been listening to phone conversations of Epstein and Dershowitz talking about intelligence agency work. And Mossad, I think Dershowitz has come out and said that's not true. And the Israeli government, for the record now, says, has obviously poured cold water on any association with Epstein.
You're going to need one hell of a whistleblower on this, I think. And I think we were talking before the recording, is that going to be Andrew Mountbatten Windsor when he finally goes down?
Well, the squeeze is coming on him. I mean, one of his jobs or roles was trade ambassador for the UK. Now, this gave him incredible early insight into all sorts of deals and things around the world. And, evidence has been found that he was tipping off Jeffrey Epstein to commercial opportunities for mining projects in Afghanistan and all sorts of things like that. So it's classic insider trading stuff. And I think this guy's gone from top of the world to perhaps one of the most despised and vilified men, and rightly so.
Sounds like it.
On the planet. What's he got to lose?
Yeah.
I don't see him going down without taking others.
No, and that'll be it.
It's not the royal way.
Yeah, It's bloody not the royal way. You're right. Rich, I reckon, there's almost an entire other episode on this.
Yeah.
In fact, there's probably a couple. You've got something more to say.
Yeah, there's one more thing just on the intelligence front. Like we said, now the CIA stuff has been touted before, and,
Yes.
and that would surprise nobody. But the government of Poland also this month, so we're recording this in February,
Yep.
instructed its own counterintelligence service to investigate if Epstein was an agent for Russian intelligence. And again, like it adds up. Of course, this guy would be highly valued.
Look, I mean, it's the ultimate.
Even if he didn't know it.
Well, what spy novel do you have to read? How many do you need to read before you get to the idea of a honey trap?
What I think Melinda Gates, so she's the former wife, or Melinda French Gates, former wife of Bill Gates, who obviously has been caught up, and people can go and read what Epstein has written and made memos of about Bill Gates and how Gates responds to that. But she came out with a really telling interview recently about the disclosures around her former husband. And she just said, I think we're having a reckoning as a society. And I think if there's any benefit or silver lining to this whole tawdry episode is that it is taking the mask off this network of masters of the universe who treated everybody else around them with utter contempt and thought that they were better than anybody, that they're untouchable. This is showing that nobody's untouchable, and this is a really, really good thing.
Yeah,
I think going
absolutely.
forward. So let's break down. What are we thinking? What are the questions we got here, mate?
Okay, we've got 3 questions. We've got the QAnon conspiracy that we're going to score. We've got the potential for intelligence, and then I think just general conspiracy surrounding Epstein, conspiracy to protect. So let's start with QAnon.
No, it's not an example of the QAnon theory in real life, so I give that a 0. But I do give a 5 out of 10 as an example of there being a deep state at play.
Yeah. So I'll give QAnon 0 as well. I reckon intelligence. There's a lot of potential there without wanting to. We're always careful to run this line of endorsement, but I reckon you're pushing into 6 out of 10 territory. There's more to be. There's more of a story to come there, and then Epstein himself and the cover up around him. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10 for the cover up, or 12 out of 10. Intelligence, more to come. I think there'll be more. Obviously, intelligence's networks are guarded by government and things, and they have their own protection racket for various reasons. But I reckon, look, I'm going to say 7 there. Yeah, if you're not if you were an intelligence service or operative and you weren't trying to get Epstein, you should be at Centrelink.
We'll cut that. Where's the voice of God? All right. Well, that was a very, very heavy episode. I'm Nick Coatsworth. You are Richard Baker, the voice of God, Ed Gooden. This was the Conspiracy Cabal. And please follow us on
Instagram. You can find us at Conspiracy Cabal Pod, and you can email us, conspiracycabal@outlook.com. Thank you, Bill Gates, for Outlook.
Yeah, thank you, Microsoft.
Thanks for listening, guys. Come back next week. And as always, big thanks to our sponsor, Whole Life, an Australian pharmacy and wellness retailer with stores across the country and an easy-to-use online platform.
Where we both agree that good health is not a conspiracy. See you next week.